Hey guys, Bradley tuning in, coming in with another video, and today we're talking 2020. What are my predictions for the Toronto real estate market? We're gonna put together all of the really cool information we do. We do videos every single week. That's over 50 videos this year alone we're gonna finish. And so today I want to try and cram all of that into one video to try and give you the best insight on what you can expect to happen in the new year. As an investor and a broker, it is key for us to know exactly what happens in and around our market. And so before I get started jumping into what's going to happen in the new year, I just want to start all of this off by understanding where we stand today and look at the numbers from November 2019. When we look at this, what we see is new listings are down 17.9% year over year. Active listings are down over 27%. And the average selling price is actually up 7%, which is astronomical compared to what we thought we would have. And it sits just over 840,000. But this last paragraph really gets me. It's really a summary of what the Toronto Real Estate Board has to say. It says that there was a greater share of listings that were sold throughout the second half of 2019, and the increased competition between buyers resulted in an acceleration in price growth. Expect the price growth to increase further if we see no relief from the supply front. Is this not what I've been saying through the second half of 2019? It's like a mirror image that they're really summarizing for what 2019 looked like. We had a first half that was kind of boring and there wasn't a whole lot going on, but then the second half things started picking up and we see this trend, which I'm gonna hammer home for you right now. But before I get started, my name is Bradley. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. We're gonna continue to put out fantastic content. Our channel, Watson Estates, has become a platform for many brokers and other realtors across the GTA to learn and to get the information they need to bring to the client. So why not follow us and get it direct to yourself? I'm going to continue to put out fantastic content. I'd love for you to follow on our journey. And also, before I get started, I just want to share, we just got back from Mexico. We had a fantastic time. While I was there, spent lots of time eating. Wow. Did some shooting and made some big splashes. Without further ado, let's talk about 2020. Now, you guys, I haven't even asked this question, but I get a lot of people like giving their 2 cents really on what they think is gonna happen. And here's a few things that viewers are saying will happen in the new year. Baseline says detached home values will have a small spike in the spring if inventory goes lower with no more shocks to the system. And Kathy says a balanced market, but hopefully for more of an increase in prices to make more of my investments. I totally hear that. Don't blame me, Kathy. I hope we get a lot of money too. These investments will continue to go up, and that's the one good thing I think out of all of these increasing in prices. But let me ask you guys a question directly. What do you think will happen in 2020? These have come just from conversations I've had with many viewers like yourself, but I would love to ask the question, put it down in the comments below. What do you think is gonna happen in 2020? What are your predictions given all of these things and maybe outside factors that we didn't even mention in this video? So let's move along. What is the government saying is going to happen? And we look no further than CMHC to fill this question. First thing they say is they expect sales to surge in BC and Ontario through 2021, and it can be accounted for by an increasing disposable income. And you can see from this chart from tradingeconomics.com that it is in fact the case. There's a pretty quick growth in disposable income. Their next prediction is that sales took a hit because of the stress test. This is looking back, and home prices had slow growth, but they anticipate even in the provinces that haven't done so well. Now, we did do a video across Canada speaking to the different provinces as well, but they're expecting modest gains but no decreases even across the country. And their third and final prediction is that new builds will plateau. And speaking that, we hit a 10-year high in 2017 for new builds, but we've actually been on a decline since. And even though they say that in this publication, and you can see that the housing starts haven't really increased, they also posted this tweet which says that we saw an unchanged increase in construction between November and from October of 2019. So realistically, they're not expecting us to see much changes as far as new construction goes. Which brings me to me. What do I expect to happen in 2020? Now, any of you who follow my content, have followed me even for the last couple of months, you know the major topic here is supply. And I know that you're hearing it all over the news. People don't maybe fully understand supply, and it sounds so cliche because people that have supply have high markets. That makes sense, and it just seems kind of normal and overplayed, but it is in fact the case. We do have a supply challenge, and I want to show you, I want to paint the picture for you through charts of what's going on. And I like this image of a faucet and a drain. We've got this amount of water sitting in this tub, if you will, or in this sink, and that is our current listings. The faucet hasn't really changed all that much. It's still pouring the same amount, but the drain is getting bigger and bigger. You're gonna see these in these charts. So let's start off with our faucet, the new listings that are coming in. These are all new listings for all housing type across the Toronto Real Estate Board. So even outside of Toronto, you can see that the faucet has really been unchanged other than what we saw back in 2017, which got a little bit nuts. Things aren't changing. There's not a whole bunch of new listings coming in. But when we look at the drain, what is going out, we see that there is a slight decline, especially in the second half of 2019. And this next chart shows on the days of market, there is clearly a decline that seems to be forming. Maybe not all that much, but it seems to be continued. And we've been watching this over the course of the year. And earlier in the year, we had a lot of people that didn't necessarily agree, and we had a lot of backlash for making these comments. But I think it's starting to paint a very clear picture here that there's a bit of a decline happening as far as days on market. So although we don't see a bunch of listings coming on, we do see that sales are now creeping up. So we can see that very clearly here over last year. And these are a lot of the statistics that show the success of 2019 are kind of in this. But the result is a quickly declining months of inventory. Now I'm going to show you one more chart, but viewer discretion is advised. I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to see what's going on here. No offense to all the rocket scientists out there, but clearly months of inventory has been taking a hit very quickly in 2019, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of obstacles to have that trend continue into 2020. Now, it doesn't take much to look back and see what that looked like as we were leading up to the rapid increase in prices that we saw in 2016 and 2017. And I don't want to paint that picture, but you can see it pretty clearly in this diagram. So we've talked about supply and this kind of faucet and drain concept that we see, but what other pressures do we see on demand that's kind of driving this months of inventory to just be pushed down, down, down? And the first thing I have to start with is immigration. Now, I did a video on this talking about whether it was good or bad. You can check that out, and there's a lot more information because I had a lot of objections to immigration. A lot of people hate immigration, and people are very passionate on either side. So we had a discussion about that, so I won't drive it home here, but clearly the growth for immigration is going to be there because in 2021, the plan is to have 350,000 immigrants, up from 330 that we saw this year. But one fascinating thing is 60% of these immigrants are actually skilled workers. And for people who are using it as a platform for the political race, which was a big thing a few months back, you can't look at this politically because even the conservatives agreed that there needs to be an increase in immigration. Both parties were stood on the same platform as far as immigration needs to increase. So in any case, immigration will continue to drive and enforce the Toronto real estate market. Okay, next topic. Let's talk about the economy. Now, what's fascinating is in November, we actually saw a job loss. We shed over 71,000 jobs last month. Now, maybe that was some kind of fluctuation from the election. I don't know. I'm not smart enough to study all of the information behind that. But when you look overall, the economy is actually doing very well. In fact, year to date in 2019, we actually added 26,000 new jobs. So overall, I think there's agreement that the Canadian economy is doing well. But this brings me to another topic on interest rates. Across the world, interest rates and central banks have been lowering their interest rate. But here in Canada, we've done everything possible to not do that. Now, maybe they're equipping themselves for in the event that something happened in an economic slowdown worldwide. That would make sense to me. But I want to talk specifically on interest rates because this is what you're paying when you go to get a mortgage, and this can also be a huge driver of demand for purchasing more real estate. Here we look at the historical lending rates, and we can see that we are generally low. There's been an attempt to increase it in the last century, but overall they maintain them at a pretty low rate. Which brings me to a video that I did early in the year talking about the biggest flags of the market here in Toronto. And if you remember from that video, the biggest thing that I see as a risk is global instability. It doesn't have to do with our local market. Our local market is very strong. But from an international perspective, there's a lot of questions going on. And I think this is kind of what is driving this question around interest rates and what will happen into 2020. But if I were to hedge a prediction, and taking a lot of this from the mortgage industry, because they seem to have a bit of a consensus there, the central bank here in Canada's goal is going to be to maintain rates. They don't want to bring them down. But realistically, in 2020, I anticipate there to be 1 or 2 decreases in the interest rate. Now, there's a chart here that was posted by Mortgage Sandbox where they paint the picture actually quite clearly that there's going to be this decline that happens. Now, they're anticipating, where I would disagree with this chart, that the increase will happen even as early as 2021. I don't think we're going to rebound that fast, but it is interesting to see that picture, that people are expecting the rates to eventually come down due specifically to the global uncertainty. Now, as we transition into affordability, because affordability has been a big question in 2019, I want to share what some of your thoughts were, because I did a video talking about this ridiculous growth that we saw in the low end segment, specifically in condos downtown Toronto. And so I asked you guys what your plan would be if you were in charge to try and fix this, to try and get that information to policymakers. Here are some of the answers that we got. Matt Sky said a few things which I found interesting. One was the vacant home tax, which we did a video back in as early as 2018. I don't know if you guys like this idea, but fascinating concept. And even number 2 and 3, the foreign buyer tax, even nationally, the Liberals are currently speaking about, and regulations on Airbnb or taxes on them also is in conversation right now. So these are potentially on the way. Harmeek mentions ideas such as legal basements, subsidized housing, and as we move into what Ivan said, his first thought was nobody can improve supply in Ontario. What a tragedy. However, he also had this interesting point talking about inclusionary zoning, and I want to bring this up because I haven't done any videos on this, but it's a very fascinating. Here's a video that was put together that's a call to residents that explains a little bit about inclusionary zoning and why it's necessary. Check it out.
Well over 50% of my income was going to rent before I moved in the basement.
40-ish%, like 60.
1,300 flood inclusive. Yeah, you have to bring your own life raft, but is by Beltwoods, so super trendy.
Toronto, you deserve better than that.
Care about housing.
If you want to get a little bit more information on what exactly inclusionary zoning is, you can check that out on toronto.ca. But I want to get into baby boomers. Now, this is a little bit of a sneak peek because I'm doing a video on baby boomers in the coming weeks in the new year. You're not going to want to miss it. But just as a teaser, right now, baby boomers age between 59 to 74. So they're just kind of getting to that age where you would anticipate that a lot of them would want to downsize. They'd want to move, maybe go to a condo or whatever, and a lot of them are doing that exact thing. However, at the same time, we have pressure from millennials, peak millennials that are entering their 30s that are demanding low-rise homes. But what we're seeing is that the baby boomers are halting this transition because they don't want to move. They want to live at home. And so this is going to cause an additional challenge and create great opportunities into 2020 and maybe beyond that we definitely want to keep our eye on and that you will not want to miss this video. So make sure you subscribe. We're going to show that to you guys in the next few weeks, but definitely an important fact as we move into 2020. As we move into the political side of things, the Liberals that are now elected have this plan for a home buyer incentive. Now, I know that a lot of you who follow my channel know about this, but I'm realizing as I'm talking to people that I'm just starting to get to know and new business, that many people actually aren't aware of this and that there's going to be an increase in this. And there's a huge prediction and opportunity built within that on the low-rise segment. We did a video back in October talking about that. And so you're going to want to keep an eye on as that transitions, which I anticipate it will, what that will look like and how that will affect the low-end market here in Toronto. And my last fun fact that also hasn't been mentioned in videos, there's a lot of really good nuggets in this one, is that they've taken REBA 2002, which was what kind of governed all the real estate agents. And we've been working on this for the last year or two. I've been getting emails through the roof talking about what's happening, but now there's a new bill. It's called the Trust in Real Estate Services Act. And part of that, where it applies to the general public, is it will allow, as predicted, I actually predicted it 2 weeks before in a video called How Real Estate is Different Around the World. And I'll show it to you right here. And I totally nailed it because what's happening now is they're going to allow, as part of this bill, people to have an open bidding process. But however, you're going to need to have both the buyer and the seller agree to it. But agents will now have that as a platform for trying to address the multiple offer situation. Realistically, would you do it at this point? No, I wouldn't advise my clients to do it, but you have the ability to if you would like. All of this to say, what are my predictions for 2020? I think we're going to have a pretty good market. And I think you can see that through all of this information that I've collected. I would be shocked if we didn't have at least a 5% growth across the board. This year we saw 7% and we only had half a good year. Next year is supposed to do even better. But I'm going to ask you guys, what do you think is going to happen in 2020? Do you think the market's going to go up? Do you think it's going to crash? What kind of videos are you watching and what's getting in your head? I'd love to hear what are some of your ideas, some of these topics. There's so many things going on. And there's so many opportunities moving into 2020, and I'd love to hear from you guys. I appreciate everything you do and everything you've brought to us in 2019. We're excited for the new year, and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget. See you next time. Take care. Keep it real.